Dear friends, today we're going to be learning the page 24 of the tractate Sotah. We're almost halfway in the study between Pesach and Shavuos of this entire tractate, and we're beginning the fourth chapter, Arusa B'Shemeres Yavam. So here we're going to talk about the different types of women that actually are allowed to be brought and to give the potion to drink. Because if a woman does not drink, then she loses her ksuva. She drinks to be able to keep the marriage together and to keep her ksuva, the monetary portion of her marriage, when it dissolves, if it's through divorce or any other way. So there we're going to talk about three types: those who cannot drink and therefore don't take the ksuva; those who drink and if they come out proper, they take their ksuva. And other types of situations. So the Mishnah says like this: if someone is engaged, and we spoke before, at the time of the Talmud, a rusin, which is the first part of marriage, which made you forbidden, the woman forbidden to be married to anyone else, but you're not allowed to yet live together, and the official didn't even have any sexual relations, or what we call today kiddushin. Today we do both under the chuppah at the same time, but then it was divided by actually a year. So someone who's in that state, actually, if she has an affair, she is dealt with as an adulterous woman. But we're going to say that in Arusa, such a woman cannot get to drink the mayim amorim, the potion, to verify if she had any relations with the person she was caught hiding with. Same thing, Shemeres Yavam, someone whose husband passed away without any children, so she has to marry one of the brothers. So during the time, she's already officially like half married to the family. Usually the older brother has the first chance. But she's like an engaged woman. She's not married until they come together. And there's various opinions if they just have relations as she become his wife, or they have to go through chuppah, etc. But here he says that a woman, these two categories, do not drink and do not take a ksuba. So even though they have a ksuba already, but they do not drink because their husband to be has not yet officially had relations with them, and it says you first have to have relations before. This is the opinion we would think. In the Gemara, we'll see, we learn it from verses. But they do not drink, and therefore they do not take a ksuva, because if you cannot drink a verify, you cannot take a ksuva, you cannot get your marriage alimony. And he brings in the Mishnah a verse that only someone who's actually a husband fully, but not people who are halfway into the marriage. What about someone whose marriage is not validated by the Torah? So, for instance, a widow who's married to a high priest. A high priest is not allowed to marry a widow. So, if he marries her, they're married, but it's forbidden, and there's a sin that comes with it every moment they're married. Or someone who's divorced, or someone who went through chalitza, cannot marry a regular kohen, or someone who's a mamzer, someone who falls into the category of an unwanted person, or a mamzer, someone comes from a illicit relationship, or a nesina. These are the gevonim who King David forbade. Joshua, and then later King David forbade them from entering with the Jewish people. So these are marriages that even though you're married, you're living in sin. So in those cases, the woman does not drink the potion, because the Torah is not going to put you through this process if it doesn't even officially recognize that this is a marriage acceptable. It's a marriage, but not acceptable marriage. Then he tells us there are some other people that don't drink or take the ksuva, and that is if a woman says, I am tameh, so even though you're not a witness, I agreed that something happened between me and the person, she loses her ksuva, and she obviously can't drink, because drinking is only to verify what happened. Or if witnesses came, as we discussed that earlier on in this tractate, witnesses came later, and if a woman says, I'm not going to drink, once she refuses to drink, even though we can't prove she did anything, but yet she does not get her ksuva. Now, what happens if her husband said, I don't want to give her to drink, or he happened to have relations with her in between the time of when she was accused to be with this person in hiding and the time she was brought up to the Beis Hamikdash to drink? So in those cases, she takes her ksuva and she doesn't drink. She takes her ksuva because she's still married, and it hasn't been proven that she had an affair. But she doesn't drink because, according to the Torah, you cannot drink unless the husband wants her to drink, and unless there was no relations between the husband and her from when she was suspected. What happens if on the way to bring her to Jerusalem, the husband dies? So Beis Shammai says the husband cannot give her to drink because the husband has to give her to drink. So she takes the ksuva. It just didn't happen. It's the state has to pay her ksuva. Beis Hillel says, listen, it only works in this way. Either she drinks and proves that she had fidelity to him, and then she gets a ksuva, or she doesn't drink, then she loses that fidelity and she loses her ksuva. Therefore, because we cannot give her to drink, her husband's not here, Beis Hillel said she does not take her ksuva either. Now, what happens if someone married a woman who was pregnant? So according to the Torah, once a woman, either her husband dies or gets divorced, she has to wait 2 years to get married because possibly she's carrying a child. So here, he married her when he was not supposed to. So both if she was pregnant or if she was already had a child and she was nursing, so for 2 years you're not supposed to marry. Pregnant, it's a few months. So there, the Mishnah says she does not drink or take the ksuva. This is what Omer says. Why? Because the Torah doesn't validate the marriage. It's a marriage, but the Torah says it's in sin. The Chacham, the rabbis say, listen, he's allowed to be with her, just separate for the time that the rabbis say, and then be back with her. So because he can be back with her, then therefore she should be able to drink or take the ksuva. What happens a woman who never developed properly, never matured properly to be able to even give birth and have all the period, etc. of a woman, or a woman who's older and that cannot give birth? So therefore, there's an issue with the marriage because the Torah said you have to be married to someone who can give birth, and the Torah even says that when you go through this process of drinking and you are not guilty, you give birth easier. So it's connected to the ability to give birth. So in such a case, they don't take the ksuva and they don't drink because you can't give to drink unless the other side, they get the rewards as well. Rabbi Eliezer says that because he can marry another woman, even if this woman can't give birth, but because he can marry another woman, he could fulfill the mitzvah, and therefore she should be like everyone else. And also the Mishnah concludes that all other women go through the process, either they drink, and if they prove they're not guilty, they get the ksuva, or they just don't get the ksuva. What happens? The ksuva of a kohen's wife. A kohen's wife, Eshes Kohen. The kohen's wife, even though she's suspect, if she drinks, if she comes out not guilty, he's allowed to be with her, and it's not a problem. What happens if the wife of someone who was castrated himself? So she's allowed to drink. And here we say another thing, that why is she allowed to drink? Even though now he can't have relations with her, but because at some point he had relations with her, we're talking about someone who wasn't castrated after they got married. Once you have relations once with your husband, you're allowed to be given to drink. Now we say you can point out to her that she should not be caught with anyone except someone who's underage or someone who's not a person, and this even includes bestiality. These are the people who Beis Din can warn a wife on her behalf, on the husband's behalf. Someone who became deaf or dumb, or someone who became, he lost his mind, or someone who's in prison. So when Beis Din, when the Jewish court warns and they see this woman is prancing around as if she has no problem to have affairs with other people, hang around with other men, they can give her a warning, but they can't give her to drink because only the husband can give her to drink. But if the people catch her, then she loses her ksuva and she's out of the marriage. Rabbi Yossi says, when we're talking about someone who is in prison, when he leaves prison, based on the Beis Din's warning, they can give her to drink. Now the Gemara says, it seems from the Mishnah that the Rusa Shemeres Yavam, an engaged woman or someone who's waiting because her husband died, waiting to be betrothed by one of the brothers, it seems like they cannot drink. But we say they cannot drink because they could be warned. Meaning it's not like saying that they can never give warning. Like a man can't go to a woman who he's not married to or anything and say, as we learned already, I don't want you to be with another person. You have no connection. You have to have a marital connection. So it seems like they could warn. There is some kind of marital connection, but yet, even though they could warn, they can't give her to drink. How do we know this? That warning they could, but drinking they can't. Meaning they're like half married, but not complete married. So they bring a verse where it says, speak to the Jewish people and tell them. So Marklim, tell them it's coming to add also, not only people are married simply, but even an engaged person, Shmeres Yavam, the someone who's waiting for their husband's brother to marry them, they also are allowed to be warned by those, by the future husband, the fiance who they're engaged to, and the one who's going to marry her for the brothers. So the Mishnah must be according to Rabbi Yonasan, because we find an argument. It says, while you're married, so this excludes Arusa, an engaged person that you cannot give it to drink. So we would think that would apply to Shemeres Yavam. So we say, ish, twice the word ish, that every man, that even someone who's waiting for his brother's wife to marry her, ultimately, because they're already connected by the Torah, then he could give her to drink. So that's Rabbi Yeshia's opinion. Rabbi Yonasan says, the Tachasi Sheikh, your husband tells us that Shemeres Yavam, that someone who is they have to be married because the brother died without children, is not included. They cannot give it to drink. I would think that maybe someone who is engaged you could give to drink. So they would learn another verse, Tachas Isha, under the husband, not an engaged person. So it's interesting, Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yeshua, the Gemara takes a little deeper view, and it says, if you look, according to one of them, according to Rabbi Yonasan, Shemeres Yavam, according to Rabbi Yonasan, Arusa, an engaged person, seems more of a married, more of a person that we should be able to allow to drink, because they already went through the first step of marriage, because he went and he engaged her, and actually because of him and his engagement to her, if she's caught infidel as an infidel, then she gets capital punishment. So he thinks that a Rusa is stronger. And the other one thinks, Rabbi Yonasan thinks that the Shemeres Yavam is stronger, and therefore we have to first exclude him, because there's no chuppah really needed. He just has to sort of officially take her into his home, but there's not process like a regular marriage. You have to go through all the process of marriage, because they rely on the brother's marriage, and he just has to do one step. Now, the question to Rabbi Yonasan, who says that Shemeres Yavam could drink, what does he use the extra word ish? Ish, so we say, comes to teach us that even the wife of a deaf or a dumb person, or someone who went crazy, also we're allowed to give to drink. Rabbi Yeshua, why does it say, according to Yeshua, why does it say Tachas Isha? Why does it say Tachas Isha? So he says to tell us a woman's like a woman's like a man. We're going to learn that later. So I'm going to ask a general question. We're bringing all these verses to tell us that you cannot give to drink an engaged woman who's engaged, or someone who's waiting for the brother of her husband to marry her because he had no kids. But isn't there a general rule? Isn't the general rule that you cannot give someone to drink unless they actually first had relations with the husband? But both these people never had relations with the husband. So how can we even think we're going to give them to drink if they never had relations with the husband? So he answers, Rav Muhammad says, it could happen that the one who's engaged, fiance, had relations with her even before he was allowed to. So even though he's not supposed to, but it's still considered marriage. So his relation came before. In this case, we would think he would be able to give it to drink. So we say no. The same thing by Shemeres Yavam, that someone's waiting to marry his brother's wife. The same thing we could say they had relations before, even though you're not supposed to, but still it's not called znus, and you can get married, etc. So the Gemara says Shemeres Yavam, if she has any relations, according to many opinions, she's his wife. You don't have to do anything except have relations. And Rav says that the son had relations, even though they didn't do the official marrying her to solidify that she's going to stay married to you and not have chalitza, she's your wife. She gets everything that a wife gets from her husband. So we say we are of the opinion like Shmuel that you only become the husband to the things that are written in the Torah related to inheriting, that the inheritance remains to them, but not all the other laws of marriage. So we would think that you can't drink as well. So maybe the Gemara says the Rav holds like Rabbi Yoshia that Shemeres Yavam is considered married. That's where you get everything. And Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yonis and the Shemeres Yavam not considered everything. That's where you don't get everything. The Rav says no, and many times the Talmud tries to show that there's no real arguments. The Rav says no. I can officially even hold, according to Rabbi Yonis, that says that he's not fully married. Why? Because the fact alone that the Torah has to use a verse to tell us that she's not considered married, so meaning she would be considered his wife. That's why she gets everything. But related to drinking, she's not a complete wife. And Shmuel says, I can even hold my opinion according to Rabbi Yosha that says that he is that it's not his wife. Why? Because we need a verse to include that she is also that she is like a wife, means that we would think it's not a wife. So therefore, for one thing, it's considered a wife, and for the other thing, it's not considered his wife. This is the teaching of the day. Till tomorrow.